my name is Rebecca Turner, Communication 110, Professor Hitt, and today my topic is going to be about communication in relationships. I want to talk about how couples can use communication to solve problems or issues in relationships, and even how an argument or disagreement could potentially be prevented by using communication effectively. So why do couples argue? I find that to be a very loaded question because there's a largely vast number of reasons why couples argue. You obviously have the very minor problems that we'll come back to, but I think they all stem from money or parenting, intimacy, priorities. Those are some examples I think that arguments stem from. And each of them result in equally frustrating moments. Not every argument is going to be direct, so you're not always explicitly stating the problem, and that's where a lot of these arguments come from. So back to the smaller arguments I mentioned, they usually turn into the bigger arguments, and they happen more often than not. I want to give you an example of it. It's a little bit long, so just bear with me. But let's say that you get home from work and your spouse had spent the day cleaning, and you walk in with your shoes and that they had some dirt on them. And she gets frustrated, starts yelling, and as a result of your frustration, you bring up her inability to understand that you had a long day. That leads to her attacking you regarding how you feel, that she doesn't understand you. And all of it basically is we can't communicate with each other. But I want to analyze the argument a little bit. In every single sentence that this couple is having, it begins with you. Why didn't you take your shoes off at the door? Why can't you understand that I had a long day? Why do you think I don't understand? And this argument is turned into a blame game. If your significant other turned their frustrations into, it really upsets me when, and by replacing you with I, it prevents the person to feel attacked, and it really helps them to understand why you're frustrated. And I want to consider the conflict one more time. Was it a simple frustration that turned into a conflict? Was it your partner's tone of voice? Was it the way that they responded or the way that they didn't respond that you kind of expected them to? Or was there an underlying issue? I think more often than not that there is constantly an underlying issue that builds up and you become a ticking time bomb, and eventually you just explode because of the frustrations that's built up over however long, and that results in your lack of communication and the small arguments. But you really have to figure out what you're really upset about. Is it the thing that your partner actually did, or is it something deeper? And you need to recognize that different situations require a different approach. Did your partner cheat on you, or did he leave the roll of toilet paper on the sink? Two completely different scenarios that really need different ways to communicate. You really have to address them completely differently. Are things in or out of your partner's control? Could he control getting home late? Figure it out. Move on. You need to look at yourself. I think this is so important, guys. You need to look at yourself. Did you have an attitude when you walked in the door because you were frustrated? Was it your tone of voice? Were you tired? Were you frustrated? Were you angry? Whatever it was, take a look at yourself and figure out if you were the problem, because a lot of times it does stem from us. And I really hate to say that because I know that we as people want to believe that we can do no wrong and that we're not the problem in the relationship. But really take a look at yourself, because sometimes arguments can be prevented depending on how we react. Now that we touched on conflict, I want to look at how you can potentially prevent a conflict and have an effective discussion. Don't jump to conclusions. Find out all the facts before you jump to conclusions. Assuming makes an out of me. Really figure out what your partner's motives were. Did he mean to be home late? Really? Honestly. take a minute and just figure out what the problem is and if it's something else. And discuss what actually happened. Talk about the major problem and don't get distracted by the minor problems. So, were you upset that for the last 5 years, he's been getting home late and later and later? That would be a priority issue at that point. But address that. Don't address that you got home late because you're stuck in traffic. Can't control the traffic. Figure out why you're upset. Be an active listener and give your partner your full attention. In this day and age, it is so difficult to do that because we're constantly on our phones, on Facebook, scrolling, texting, whatever. Put your phone down and just listen. Don't interrupt what your partner is saying. Let them say what they need to say and listen to what they're saying. I think lack of communication is one of the biggest killers in relationships, and it's really important to be able to recognize your partner and how they communicate. And don't just listen to them. Don't listen to respond. Like, hear them too. Hear and listen to them, because they're two totally different things, but both go hand in hand with communication. Lack of communication is definitely something that can be taught, and it will really benefit your relationship. You guys really can figure out how to communicate with each other, figure out how you guys like to be communicated with, and your relationship will flourish, guaranteed.